This is a special episode of This Lyric, That Truth podcast because I am joined by my daughter, Elliana.
Your
Welcome.
very own daughter. Do I win youngest guest on the show?
You do actually. And you are
Let's go.
representing, yeah, you're kind of representing Gen Z. So,
I am. I have to really do the most here.
well, you showed up on time. So that's a good start.
Thank
And
you. Thank you. I was 1 minute early, so I was like, this is good. We're starting on a good note.
Well, you know me, I'm always 5 minutes or 10 minutes early to everything. So 10 minutes ago,
Yes.
I texted you and I was like, did you get the information for the podcast? And then I didn't hear back from you. And then I like resent you the link, even though the producer had already sent it to you. So I'm,
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're here. And we're going to talk about something that happened in your life recently. I mentioned it on the radio show briefly, but I thought it'd be interesting to talk about how we respond when we go through really hard times and
hmm
also what people can do that's actually helpful instead of saying, let me know if there's anything I can do to help because of
Yes.
this
Yes.
experience that you went through. Is it about a month ago now?
Yeah. Yeah. About a month and a half ago.
Okay. So you are 22 years old and you're still
Yep.
technically a newlywed. You got married last June, so about a year ago.
Yes.
And
Yep.
you and your husband live in Joplin, Missouri, where he attends dental school. And
hmm
he had an exam that he took in the morning. Is that right? A kind of a stressful
Yeah.
exam. And then to kind of blow off some
Yeah.
steam, he was playing basketball with some friends at the
hmm
YMCA.
Yeah, yeah. So we had an exam in the morning and then came home, and this wasn't an unusual activity. He was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go play basketball with some friends." I thought, "Oh, great, like have fun." He usually does that a couple times a semester, so wasn't anything too out of the normal. And I'll tell the story from my perspective, and then I can kind of flash back onto like what actually ended up happening. So I was actually in this very room, and I had just received a spam call, and then so I hung it up, and then I received a call from an unknown Joplin number. And I thought, oh, maybe like the spam callers are getting smart.
I'm calling you from
And
your
so
local area code.
exactly. So sometimes they do that. So I was like, okay, I'll just let that one go to voicemail. And then I got a third call, and it was from the area code where one of his friends lives, or like grew up. So I answered the call, and he said, "Hey, just so you know, Braden passed out at the Y. Like, please get here right away." And I thought, okay, like, kind of odd. He doesn't faint often or ever. He was totally fine when he left 15 minutes ago. So I'll head over to the Y and see what happened.
Mhm.
So I get there. There is a fire truck in front of the gym. There's a police car behind it. Or there's an ambulance in the front of the gym, a fire truck behind it, and then a police car also in the parking lot. So I'm
Mhm.
thinking, oh, this is a little serious. um, so I'm like, oh, this is more serious than just passing out at the gym, I think. And so then when I rush into the gym, I see him in a stretcher with a neck brace on. His head's is looking straight up. And the EMT looks at me and goes, "Are you his wife?" And I said, "Yeah." Um, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm his wife." And she goes, "What hospital do you want us to take him to?" And I just pointed to the right
You're like, "What?"
because luckily there was a hospital right next door. I couldn't even get the words out.
Yeah. Well,
And
and
she
you're
said,
new
"He's
to
breathing."
town. Yeah, so how would you even
Yeah,
know? Yeah.
no, and I know there's, like, 2 big hospital systems, and so literally, like I said, I just point I was, like, the one
Mhm.
literally right next door, like, I didn't
Yeah.
know what else to do.
Yeah.
And she said, "He's breathing on his own right now, but we're gonna take him to the ER." And I thought, "Okay." Again, seems like a lot, but I could see that he was breathing. So I was like, "That's a good sign." And luckily he was playing basketball with his friends from school, so I met up with them. They were there. They were like, "Okay, like let's go to the ER since it's literally 2 minutes down the road. It's not like you don't even have to make a left turn. It is 2 right turns and you are in the parking lot, thank goodness." So like, "Okay, like we'll go wait with you in the ER." So then backtracking a little bit, what we now know happened was he was, like I said, playing basketball, just a casual little game. Started feeling a little faint, winded, like you're sprinting around. He hasn't played in a couple months, he usually plays a couple times a semester. So And he goes to grab his water bottle, just to sit down, take a break, grab water. What we think happened was he reached for his water bottle, passed out when he went to go get his water bottle. In the process of that, he hit his head on the corner of the bleacher, which is where all their water bottles were lined up, and then fell on the ground. And then when he was on the ground, he was having like seizure activity. And then they got the lady at the front desk, and she came over and applied the AED on his chest. And with the AEDs, it tells you what to do, So it's like, okay,
Well,
apply pressure.
hold up a second. Hold up, because you're just kind of skirting through this like really important part of the story. Because I love this lady at the YMCA. I'd love to meet her
Yes,
someday, actually. Um,
yes,
the what's her first name?
Susan.
Okay, Susan works the front desk at the YMCA, and
Yeah.
Susan's daughter had saved someone's life by administering an AED when
Yes.
she was, I think, working at a camp. And so Susan knew that it was a possibility that working at the YMCA, she might encounter a situation where she would have to use an AED. And
Mhm.
so she
Yeah.
would spend her free time familiarizing herself with the AED, with CPR protocol. Like she was working at the front desk, but she was prepared. She sees her
She was.
husband go down, grabs the AED, runs over, and the way that it works is what you're saying is you put these 2 paddles on their chest, and then the
Mhm.
machine gives you a prompt and then tells you what to do. But his
Mhm.
heart had stopped.
Yes. We now know based on the records that his heart did stop. And then it was able to kind of kick itself back into the rhythm. But at the time, like I said, we didn't. I talked to my dad about this, and I think this is definitely a God thing. At On that Friday, I did not know how bad it was. I did not
Right.
know that his heart actually stopped. I didn't know that until a day or two later, when fast forward, he was actually communicative and like talking. So at that point, I knew he was fine and I knew he was going to be okay. And so I was able to process that information differently than had I known exactly on that Friday
Mhm.
that his heart had stopped.
Yeah.
That is a miracle that he is now breathing on his own,
Mhm.
and that the AED was applied to his chest and shocked him
Mhm.
once.
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, you look back on that exact like hour and you just think back of all of the things that God really did to protect me from knowing what had happened and being able to just go in that room, say, okay, like these are our
Mhm.
next steps. I'm going to call these people. I'm going to give them the information. Um,
Mhm.
Whereas if I would have known that the condition he really was in and what
Mhm.
actually had happened, I think I would have been a lot more fearful and would have not been able to get through that weekend like
Yeah.
I did,
Yeah. God did protect you for sure. And also God had
for
him at
sure.
the right place at the right time, as sometimes happens
Yeah.
miraculously.
It's
He
crazy.
he when his heart stopped, he happened to be at a gym with an AED with a lady who knew what to do. You were
Yeah.
very close to a hospital. He got there very quickly. Did they have to shock his heart again when he was in the ambulance?
We don't think so. We look
Okay.
back at the records and it doesn't look like it.
Okay.
That was a theory thrown around, but
Okay.
yeah.
Well, then, we're on spring break at this point, so we're chilling in
Yeah.
Gulf Shores, and then first you casually texted, "Hey, prayer request," you know?
Hey, Braden fainted, which is what I knew at the time. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, he fainted.
Mhm.
Like, we're going to the hospital. And that's
Mhm.
another thing with moving far away from family. It's just, I mean, we have
Mhm.
friends in a great community here, but his parents were in Cabo. They had just landed on spring break. You
Mhm.
guys were in Gulf Shores 10 hours away. And
His mom was in Detroit.
his mom was in Detroit, his
Mhm.
sister was in Grand Rapids. So
Mhm.
no matter which way you put it, you're 10 hours away from anybody that
Mhm.
you love and that have known you your whole life, which
Mhm.
is difficult. But also, I mean, still the way people were able to surround us in that time with the community that we've met recently, in the last, I mean, 6 months, was really great too.
One thing I prayed for you when you moved to Joplin was that you would find community, that you would meet a
Hmm.
friend. And you and I had talked about this, and it was like, go to church, find a small group, figure out a way to connect. And you met this one friend, Selma,
Yes.
from
Yes.
this small group from your church, and you guys
Mhm.
have coffee every week, and I know
Mhm.
she came in and helped you out with your dog, and I know somebody
Yep.
else did too, but, it was really beautiful to see this community, even though it's only 6 months young, support you guys.
Yeah.
I know that his friends stayed with you in those first critical,
Mhm.
hours at the hospital, so you didn't have to be alone.
Luckily, yeah, 3 of his friends were there when it happened. One of them was actually driving to the gym at the time to join them to play basketball. And then one of them was playing the game with him and was there when everything happened. He was actually the one that called me. And then the third one was upstairs just working out, and actually got a text from one of the friends that like, "Hey, like, Braden's on the ground."
Mhm,
So he sprinted downstairs, and was there right away. And he was the one that actually ended up driving me to the hospital. You know, they left and brought me dinner. They ended up staying because the ICU has weird visiting hours. Here they actually close between like 6:30 and 8:30 a.m. and p.m. So then they stayed with me for those 2 hours so we could all see him at 8:30.
mhm,
Um, and
mhm.
yeah, one of them even stayed with me while he got taken back to get his MRI done. Or he even stayed at the hospital while I was able to run home and like brush my teeth and wash my face and then come back before he was even done.
Mhm.
So it was a really big help. And yeah, it's crazy the amount of community you can form in 6
Mhm.
months.
And it's worth pursuing. It's worth getting out
For
of your
sure.
comfort zone, and it's worth and I was just reading today that your generation can kind of struggle to make interpersonal connections and
Mhm.
relationships. It's easier to connect
Mhm.
online, but then when a tragedy happens,
For
you
sure.
need your people, right?
And
That's
you need
I
them, yeah, and you need them there, and, like, you don't
Yeah.
even want to ask for it in the moment, like, you don't
Mhm.
wanna ask, like, it's almost like having to ask for help in that moment for me was really hard, and so just having people that were already there, they were like, "You know what? We will be there when visiting hours
Mhm.
open in the morning, and then when your family gets here, we'll step out,
Mhm.
just so you're not by yourself,"
Mhm.
which I really appreciated. And
Mhm.
you didn't even have to ask. You know, there are people that are like, "All right, like we're gonna bring you dinner. These are two options. Which one do you want?" And they brought a phone charger, and all the things that you,
Practical things.
yes, that you don't have time to grab or even think you're going to need.
I want to spring forward real quick and let everybody know my son-in-law is okay. Your husband is okay. He was
Yes,
in the hospital for
yes,
13 days. And
yes,
so as we continue this conversation, he did come out of everything.
yeah,
But
hmm,
those first days where everything is still kind of foggy, you're trying to piece together
hmm,
information. I know that the hospital was trying to figure out the chicken or the egg. What came first? Did the heart
exactly,
event cause the seizure, or did a seizure cause a heart event? And those are very
yeah.
important things because you have to know which part of his body to treat. Do you treat the brain or do you treat the
Exactly.
heart?
Or do you treat his heart?
Yeah, and so you had these really critical hours, and I know that he was intubated when he got to the hospital, and so
Mhm.
that was scary for
Yep.
you to go in and
Oh, yeah.
see him unconscious. They had made him unconscious
Yeah.
and tubes everywhere. But then
Oh,
what
yeah.
helped you is that people said, "I'm bringing you dinner. Do you want this or do you want this?" So they didn't give you too many
Yeah.
choices, but it was like the A
Nope.
or B, right?
Yep.
Why was that
Yeah.
important?
Just because in the moment, you don't think like, you know you can leave, but you don't want to, and you want to, and, like, I mean, obviously, he's unconscious, so he needs someone to answer questions for him. I had to sign forms for him. It was it was interesting, since we're so young, I had someone, in the waiting room, they're like, "Oh, like, are you his wife?" And I said, "Yes." And she looks at me and goes, "Legally?" And I said, "Yes."
Legally.
"Yes, legally." She's like,
Legally.
"Oh, sometimes my boyfriend and I just call each other, like, husband and wife." And I was like, "No, like, legally, like, it's legit." Um and so even being there to sign forms for him so he can get certain treatment, which, I mean, they would have let him sign them the next day if they
Mhm.
had to, but,
Mhm.
you never know. You're
Mhm.
talking to so many different nurses and doctors. You have the brain doctor coming in to talk to you about XYZ, and then the heart doctor comes in 10 minutes later with a whole different batch of questions and round of explanations, and you have the nurses that switch every 12 hours. So you're constantly meeting a new team of people that are taking care of your loved ones. So even just being there and being able to have someone that can consistently explain the story or at least
Mhm.
supplement if
Mhm.
needed, I thought was important. And those times you're not thinking about meals. I mean, it's the
Mhm.
one thing you want, but if people are going to offer to bring it, I'll take it. Thank you. And
Mhm.
a large coffee, please.
Mhm. Now,
So,
you were saying what was really helpful for people that, like, texted you,
hmm
like, Venmoed you so you could get food, or what's that
hmm
service where they bring you the food? I'm blanking on the name. Grub
DoorDash.
Jor Door I was thinking Grubhub. DoorDash.
Well, that
DoorDash.
one works too. Yeah,
Okay. So, and then you could order kind of as things kind of calmed down a little bit and you were a little bit more
yeah,
with it, then you could sort of order food where you wanted to. What was the
for
most
sure.
helpful thing, would you say? So the community, the food,
hmm
the people sort of
Yeah.
kind of filling in and making and just making decisions so that you could focus on the big stuff and they kind of focus on the little stuff?
Exactly, like, we ended up having some family come in, his sister and brother-in-law were able to drive down, um, his mom came down pretty shortly after that, and I said, "You guys are more than welcome to stay at my house." Luckily, again, another thing with the Lord's timing, I had cleaned all day Friday. I am not someone that deep cleans my house often, but for some reason, I just thought, "You know what? I'm not very busy today. Might as
Mhm.
well." Lord knew I needed it.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
I said, "My house is open. There are couches and air mattresses. You guys can sleep in our bed." I just
Mhm.
kinda said, "You guys figure it out. However it works out for you,
Yeah.
please figure it out. It is open if you need it, but you don't have to take it." Um, so that was very helpful. They're like, "Yep, we'll figure everything out." So, um, yeah,
So they
it's
just
already
sort of
exciting.
they some people came in as soon as they could get there. I know your mother-in-law flew in. We
Mhm,
were connecting over text while I was on spring break. Something that was interesting between you and me was
mhm,
I was super emotional about everything. Being so far
mhm.
away, I was really living in the emotions of it and the what ifs of it.
Yeah.
You were texting me information and I was like, I was wanting to talk to you, but in those first
Mhm.
couple, I would say the first
Like 3
48,
days?
yeah, 2 or 3
Yeah.
days, you weren't even really in a place to talk, and you told me later, like, you
No.
couldn't let yourself really break down.
No.
You were in
I
go
couldn't
mode.
for sure. I was in a very, like, locked in, like, "This is what's happening. These are the next steps." And like you said, I didn't even let myself stray into the what ifs because if I knew if I got there, it would be so hard to come back. And in
Yeah.
that moment, not everything is back to normal yet, quote unquote normal. So you're still like, you still don't know what else could become of the hospital stay. And so saying it out loud to someone almost makes it too real. Like you still feel like you're living in a dream. The whole thing still doesn't feel like it actually happened. So then you saying like, "Oh, I wanna talk to you." It's not that I don't wanna talk to you, but, like,
Mhm,
I don't wanna cry in this hospital for, like, the
mhm,
5th time in 48 hours. So I'm like, texting was just so much easier in those first couple days because I was able to get information out to you and dad, my
mhm,
sisters, his
mhm,
parents, his step parents,
mhm,
his siblings and his family, everyone could receive the same information. And even
mhm,
like as doctors were coming in, again, something with the Lord's timing, his dad is a nurse practitioner who has worked in like EMTs and
mhm.
ambulances his whole life, so he understands the medical world,
Yeah,
whereas I do not. And so he was able to kind of translate, I
yeah.
guess,
Mhm,
all like the medical things that they were
mhm,
telling me because I don't understand.
mhm.
And they're telling you all these different things, and like I said, that you have a new doctor or nurse coming in there every
Yeah.
30 minutes.
So
So you're trying to make sense of it, but
what I learned as a mom is the first time navigating a big situation like that in one of my kids'
mhm,
lives, I had to let you be you and you deal with it the
mhm,
best way for you to deal with it. And
for
because
sure.
I was emotional and I needed the phone call and I needed that assurance that you were okay, doesn't mean that's what you
Mhm,
needed. And
for
so
sure.
I had to step back and truly like, okay, what is it that
Mhm,
you need? And that's what I'm growing
mhm,
in as a mom and trying to not just push my own thing on you and my own
for
emotional needs.
sure.
And so you were texting all these people, getting out the information. I was texting my sister's group chat because they were my emotional support and I was giving them
Totally.
updates. That's the other thing.
Totally.
In those first few days, there's just so much information that it's like
Yes.
turns out later, really, that didn't happen that way or this da 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 da, but
Exactly. It's
everything is
like
so
everything's a
frenetic.
theory at the
Yeah.
time and everything's
Yeah.
like, this is the latest. This is what we know. This is what's happening."
Yeah.
And then you kind of backtrack in 48 hours and you're like, "No, it was the heart that caused the brain, not the brain that caused the heart issue."
Mhm.
So then you have to kind of backtrack all these things and whatever.
Mhm.
So,
So in those first couple of days, what was super
mhm.
helpful to you is community, is people
Mhm.
not giving you too many choices. I'm bringing you dinner. Do you want A or B? What do
Yep.
you need? I can pick up a phone charger or here, this is available, but then you don't make me figure out the details. Don't make me get into the
Yes.
details.
Yes.
Then family kinda started coming in and surrounding you guys and stuff, and then
Mhm.
that changed a little bit. Then Braden gets transferred to a hospital in St. Louis. You know he's gonna be okay,
Yes.
but they just have to really figure
Yeah.
out what has gone on. So now you're in the
Yep.
doldrums of the
Yes.
hospital and the horrible
Yes.
lights and the
Oh yeah.
temperature was so hot, and it's
Mhm.
boring as all get out. You felt
Oh
like you were
yeah.
in kind of an unsafe area, so you really couldn't leave because it wasn't really safe for you to get up and be walking around.
Yep.
What helped in that time?
I think a couple of things. Still, the DoorDash gift cards were very helpful, again, especially in that time because I didn't feel safe walking around. So having someone be able to deliver food to the doorstep was huge. And something I would not have thought about otherwise.
Mhm.
You're at the other thing you can have access to is cafeteria food, which is fine for a couple days, but then it just kind of starts to taste
Yeah,
gross.
yeah.
um, and I think also the biggest thing you try to do in those hospital rooms is distraction. Like you distraction slash entertainment, I'll say. Like you almost need something to get your mind either off of the beeping sounds that are going off every 5 seconds for who knows why. The, again, the new people you're meeting, the ins and outs, the questions you have to remember to ask the doctors and advocate for yourself. You want something, I guess, lighthearted, entertaining. Like I feel like we both spent a lot of time on social media just like trying to just kind of escape the reality that you're living.
Yeah.
And so even texting people back home and in those moments when you're so bored, it's like being other people sharing what's going on in their lives. I feel like you don't want to if you're like the person on the other end of the line because you're thinking this person's going through such a big thing, like I don't want to worry them. But even like having a regular quote unquote conversation with someone about something not related to the current reality I'm living was also really nice.
Okay. That is something I also heard from a guest I talked to on this podcast who wrote a book about grief when she lost her
Mhm.
husband. She said it was so nice to be able to go to Meyer and have somebody talk to me about something other than the fact that my husband had died.
Mhm.
And she even said people kind of do this
Yes.
weird thing where they see you and then they kind of avoid you because they feel like they don't know what to say. It's like, say something.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be about
It
the tragic thing.
no. You don't have to say the perfect thing in the moment.
Mm.
Like, when we were in the hospital in St. Louis, the Masters was on. I would have talked to anyone about the Masters. Like, please ask me about who I think my favorite person is and who I think's gonna win the tournament. Because that was the one thing where I was like, I can watch the Masters and it's something like you can talk to other people about and you can give updates about Braden. I don't you don't want to dismiss what's happening, but it's just some sense of like
Yeah.
normalcy
Yeah.
and like you're not like
Mhm.
being stepped away from because you're sick. Like I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think that's really practical. Just be a normal
hmm
person. Just be a
Yeah,
normal person.
like my sister was working on moving at the time and she was signing a lease for her apartment and I felt like she didn't want to update me as much because
Mhm.
she knew what was happening. And so keep like even asking those questions. Like I was like, "So how's this going? Like did you end up signing the lease? Who are you living with?" All
Mhm.
these kinds of things. Or
Mhm.
even asking how like Braden's family was doing. Like tell me about something regular outside of these
Mm.
four prison walls that I'm
Mhm.
currently living
Mhm. Mhm. You also mentioned to me that you were in the hospital for 13 days, and
in. Mhm.
what would have been nice is if someone had sent you flowers, not to the hospital room, but to your house. so that you
Yeah.
could have arrived just with something bright and
Mhm.
cheery to look at, and so many people did so
For
many
some
cool things, but yeah,
Totally, and I'm not
yeah,
saying, like, anyone did
no,
anything wrong.
no, of
It was
course.
just one of those things that when you're thinking about, like, "Oh, like, that
Mhm.
would've been, like,
Yeah.
really nice," or just, like, something fresh, like, something
Mm.
that's bright and colorful when all you're used to is these dull and then everyone's having these heavy conversations with you about these life-changing things.
Yeah.
You're like, "Can I just have some flour?" Like,
Bright,
"Something bright and
cheery,
cheery,
happy,
please."
joy. That's really
Yes,
good. I never, until you had said that, I would have never thought that, and I just think
for
whatever
sure.
way you wanna play that out, some spark of
Mhm.
joy, that's so good. Anything
Yeah,
else
or
that
even
really
if it's, like Go ahead.
anything else that would have blessed you or helped you, in that time, or even today, as you're kind of
Mhm.
beyond the I tend to ask you that too, like when you and I talk, that's the first question. How's Braden? How's Braden doing? How's
Yeah.
da 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 da?
Yeah.
How's he sleeping with his
Yep.
defibrillator, and just maybe try to talk about other stuff, right?
Totally. Yeah, and it's like you don't wanna again, you don't wanna dismiss that it happened. Obviously, it was a big life thing, and now, like, you're different because of it. You lived through this big thing. But even, like, I feel like the hard thing is that we weren't near our close friends and family. We had great community here that stepped in, and I actually ended up making them cookies afterwards as a thank you. I was like, "Thank you guys so much for everything you did." Um, Not that that's required at all. Like, they did it I didn't have to do that, but it was just something that
Mhm.
felt nice. But even, like, I would have loved to even be able to come home and, like, go out to dinner with my parents or, like, go out to dinner with his parents and just, like, celebrate that you're done, you're out of the hospital for 13 days, um, and that, like, life now can continue on. Because, like I said, you go back and with, like, all the what ifs and the this and that and whatever, you realize that they didn't happen. Like,
Yeah.
he's still here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
This is the first time I've heard you be emotional about it.
I
Do you
knew I
think?
was going to be.
Mhm. So that was
Yeah.
Ellie, that was the emotion that I was expecting in those first couple of
Yeah.
hours,
Yeah.
and they didn't come until 6 weeks later, but
Yeah.
that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay, 'cause that's what
Well, because
that's what
that's how I process things.
Mhm. Yeah.
I very
You
much when chaos is happening, I'm someone that just kind of blocks everything else out. I narrow in on whatever is happening, and it's like we're getting it done. We're figuring it out. I hate calling people. That's definitely a Gen Z thing. Hate calling people. Hate talking to new people. I was in that medical records office, making sure you're getting all of his records before we left. I was calling doctors to get his prescriptions like ready to go, and that is
Mhm.
so. I N like, I hate doing stuff like that. I'm so
Mhm.
bad at it, I don't like it, it's the worst.
Mm.
But, like, in that moment, I can just zoom in on it, it's like, "This has to get done, this is a hill that we have to climb, we're gonna climb it super fast, and then we're going to
Mhm.
figure out everything else later."
Mhm.
And so now's the later when
Yeah.
yeah.
You're just like your dad.
Yeah. Yep.
Your dad's a pastor, Pastor Dave as we know him
Mhm.
around here, and when tragedy happens, he's that same way. He just jumps right in, and he gets it done, and he's meeting with the
Mhm.
people, and, I'm on the floor, "Lord, why? What if? Whoa,"
Uh-huh.
At one point, you said when we finally did talk, you said, "Mom,
Mhm.
calm down. I am sitting here.
Yeah.
He is alive. He is breathing. He is gonna be okay. So, like, get it
Yeah.
together, mom."
Yeah.
Um, what did this if you're comfortable talking about it, what
Yeah.
has this done? You're 22 years old, you're a newlywed, you've gone through a life-altering traumatic event.
Mhm.
Praise God it wasn't a tragedy.
Exactly.
What did this teach you about God?
Even I just think all the ways that that he uses these bad quote unquote bad situations just for his glory to be reflected and being able to not only use his story but just be able to say like, "Oh, like this is what happened and God got us through it." But also the way that it could have been so much worse and he protected us from so much worse. I think is something that I definitely have learned from the experience. Like I said, like, it was not a miracle, but, like, the fact that I didn't know what had happened that Friday night allowed me to get through that weekend
Mhm.
he like, I was, like,
Yeah.
going forward, everything was good, I was figuring
Mhm.
everything out, and, like, I was in such a better I never once questioned that he was gonna be okay,
Mhm.
and had I known that his heart had stopped on Friday,
Mhm.
I would've been questioning the entire time if he was actually gonna wake back up.
I feel like you still have a hard time even really acknowledging that that's what happened. Is that hard to say out
Yeah,
loud? Yeah. That's fair.
a little bit, yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. It's just weird, like I said, it's parts of it still don't feel real,
Mhm.
and it's like, "Oh, yeah, like, 13 days in the hospital," and you think, "Oh, like, that's what everyone has to go through," and then we know someone else that had kind of a medical situation, and they were out in 24 hours, and I was like, "What? People leave the hospital in a day? That's crazy."
Uh-huh.
And you were like,
Mm.
"Yeah, your situation's a little unique." And I thought,
Mhm.
"Oh, okay." But you don't know anything else, you know?
Yeah. I feel like going forward when because life is life. Life
Yeah.
always be lifing,
Oh,
and
yeah.
something is gonna things are gonna come up in your community and in your
Yeah.
life, and I feel like you're gonna be more prepared to be the person on
Yeah.
the other side, sending the
Totally.
Venmo or the DoorDash or the
Yeah.
flowers or the cookies.
And yes. And I would say show up for people too.
Mm,
They might not ask you to.
ah,
Like, I Braden and I both, we never want to inconvenience people. It obviously is an inconvenience to drive 10 hours in the middle of the night to come down to see Braden. It's inconvenient to have to hop on a flight and get a rental car. Like, we don't want to make you do that. Like, we have people here. It's okay. But looking back on it, I'm so glad the people that did do the inconvenient thing were
mhm,
here, even
mhm.
though I would have never asked them to be.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Do the inconvenient thing.
yes.
That's so good. Do the inconvenient thing.
Mhm.
Hmm. Hmm. Do the inconvenient. I love that. Um, don't
Like, you guys
assume.
even drove like, you drove you took a 4-hour detour out of your drive back from spring break to see us for an hour and bring us lunch. Like, that's inconvenient, you know?
We couldn't
So
stay that long because we had your almost 14-year-old brother with us, and he was pulling medical gloves
playing with
off of the
hospital
wall.
gloves.
But, a moment of respite too, right?
Oh, for
And
sure,
he
and,
had.
like well, that's even the thing, like, when people come visit and, like, we played Monopoly Deal with his sister and brother-in-law for an
Mhm,
hour, you
mhm,
know?
mhm.
Or, like, his mom brought me coffee and a breakfast sandwich every
Yeah,
morning, and his dad came and was able
mhm,
to talk to the doctors and was always willing to get cookies at night for, like, something, fun.
yeah,
Um, and then his dad and stepmom ended up flying down a couple days later to visit us in St. Louis again,
yeah.
so
Do the
doing like I
inconvenient
said,
thing.
doing the inconvenient thing, even though, like, the person that is going through it is not gonna ask you to, most likely will
Mhm,
not. Maybe
mhm.
if you're, like, in their immediate circle and they're really good at processing their emotions and can tell you exactly what they need,
Yeah,
maybe they will, but
yeah.
I would guess they won't, so,
That's why it's not good to say, "Let me know what you need," because you
just do it.
yeah, just do it. And
Just do something.
I love that idea of the options. I
Yeah.
can I can bring dinner over on Monday, or I can send
Yep.
lunch to you on Tuesday. I can,
Yep.
even going down I can pick up the kids from school and take them to dinner, whatever,
Exactly. Yeah.
whatever. Do
Yep.
the inconvenient thing. I'll
Yeah.
tell you what, Ellie,
It's like,
that's an area I
send
need to
money for
grow in. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. It's like
Yeah.
even thinking ahead and, like, you don't have to even send money. Even just, like,
Mhm.
sending a text and saying that you're thinking of the person
Mhm.
can be all you can do, and that's really important too. Praying for the person is always,
Yeah.
should be the first line of defense, should be the first thing.
Yeah.
And but then, like I said, coffee is a great one. Starbucks gift cards are great. Most hospitals have Starbucks or at least one near. Like,
Yeah.
DoorDash is great. Then the person can pick whatever restaurant they wanna go to, and it arrives at the door of the hospital whenever they want it. Um,
Yeah.
show up if you can.
Yeah.
So, do the inconvenient thing.
I'll tell you the song that brought me to my knees as I was walking and thinking about God's goodness over this situation, which is a miracle.
Yeah.
was Jen Johnson's Goodness of God. All my
Mhm.
days I've been held in your hands from the moment that I wake up until I lay my head. I'll sing of the goodness of God.
'Cause all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God.
And you know what? God is faithful even when the outcome isn't like the outcome happened for you. The right place at
Yeah,
the right time, right? God's
totally.
faithful.
Yeah,
God will lead you through the fire in the darkest night. Like that song says,
yeah,
he's close like no other, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you for teaching us to do the inconvenient thing. I love how you put that.
Yeah.
And keep getting your emotions out. Don't
I'll
bottle them all
try.
up. The Bible has this beautiful thing about tears, and it says that he collects them in a little bottle. He saves up our
Yeah.
tears, so they're not wasted.
Yep. Saved mine for, like, 6 weeks, and now they're here.
I love you, honey. I'm so glad for the goodness of God in your life and
I
in
love
your
you too.
husband's life.
Me too.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of This Lyric, That Truth. If you were inspired by today's conversation, feel free to share it with a friend and leave a 5-star review. If you're looking for more hope and encouragement in your music, download the Joy Media mobile app for free wherever you download your apps. I'm Ceci, and I so look forward to sharing more in-depth conversations with you as we talk about the lyrics that encourage us and shape our lives. Meet me back here next week for another episode of This Lyric, That Truth.